employee, which ended at approximately 6:10. This is very loud. We will start our regular meeting today with public comment. Is there, I think we said there's no one in the room for public comment. Is there anyone on the phone for public comment? Okay, thank you. I will not read my entire public comment speech then. If there's seeing no public comment, we will move to the approval of the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
I move the consent agenda be approved as presented.
Second.
Thank you. The consent agenda is a meeting management tool whereby the board is able to pass multiple items in one motion. These items have been reviewed by the board prior to this meeting. We have a motion on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Consent agenda passes. Next, we have establishment of the regular agenda. Superintendent, are there any changes to the regular agenda?
No, there are no changes.
Thank you. With that, we will move to our first item. First up was a really important week in the district last week. It was graduations. We thought we'd spend a little bit of time on reflections from the board of those activities. Who'd like to get us started? We'll start with the you want to start with the superintendent? We can do that. Superintendent.
Oh,
Your first time.
I'd be happy to share on graduations. First of all, they were incredible. The series of graduations and program completion ceremonies were powerful across our academy-based transition program to Gibson Eck and to the large scale events at T-Mobile Stadium. So it was very special across the board and really reflected the unique aspects of each of our school cultures and amazing work. Just kudos to our graduates, to our family members, our caregivers, our staff, our teachers, our administrators, and all of our operational team members to support our learning and our students' trajectory and experience educationally. I'd also be remiss if I didn't say a special shout out to someone who was very behind the scenes. That's Jennifer Fitzgerald, the administrative assistant for high schools. She was behind the scenes to make all the buses run at the T-Mobile Stadium set of graduations. It's a lot to do, right? 3 in a row, and to sort of turnkey then get ready for the next graduation. And there's variation across how those ceremonies do go, and just orchestrating all of that, it takes a tremendous effort. So just a special shout out to her. And it was just an honor to be able to witness the power and energy of our students and their families and caregivers and friends. So amazing.
Awesome. Thank you. Who wants to go next?
It's always difficult to decide if I like better the graduations that are small, like Gibson Eck and ACT, where they say something about each student. And I have to say, at ACT, when they read their, was it Who Am I or
I Am.
I Am poems, those were just, it was hard to get through without a little tear. But at the same time, on the big graduations, it was just, if I had to use one word, it was joy. Like even the kids who were trying to be all serious and I'm cool, this doesn't impact me. When they got up there, they had a big smile on their face. They shook their principal's hand. It was just, it's just lovely. It's the culmination of 12 or 13 years of hard work. And it's just really nice to see so much joy.
Totally agree. We had 2 wonderful days of graduations. It is always so heartwarming to watch our ACT students be able to stand on that stage and walk across, and their beaming smiles make that all worthwhile. So the ACT one is always very special. And of course, Gibson Eck was great because once again, you know, we have shown that our Gibson Eck High School has kids go to a full range of after high school experiences, from any number of colleges and universities to other programs or a gap or something else. And there was a wide range, and very happy students to be moving on.
I would agree. I think that that as Gibson Eck
grows in what they do and do it even better every year. The fact that you have students going to Rome and Japan and the UK to go to school, I thought is really, really interesting, because there was always that fear at the beginning, like, would they even be able to get into college? And not only are they going to universities or going into welding or wanting to start their own welding business, or, getting into drama at the UW. These things, I think that it's really showing that the variety of opportunities for them is just has expounded. For me, I'm sorry that I missed the ACT ceremony. That is one of my favorite ones to go to. I think it's how we care for all of our students, and watching the successes and who they become is really impactful. And I think just even the comprehensive high schools and watching those students traipsing across, hearing from the student speakers and from the staff members who are chosen to speak, and the connection that they've made with students. We talk about connection all the time, and it's a great opportunity for us to hear how students have connected with certain teachers and ask them to come celebrate this event with us by speaking to us and sharing those final thoughts as their commencement ceremony. So it's about what they're commencing, where they're beginning the next phase of their life. So that was a great opportunity. Loved that.
I was sad to have missed the Gibson Economic graduation. But I did enjoy for our comprehensive high schools that they got to return to having everything like it was with the processional. And I think that was a really great thing to see. And as you said, to see the joy as they're walking along the stadium.
Thank you all. I did not make it through the ACT graduation without crying. I tried again. I tried again this year, but there's just it's a really special experience, and I love it every year. Gibson Neck was amazing. I think I was really struck by how beautiful the weather was for the comprehensive high schools at the stadium. I mean, it was absolutely a gorgeous day, and it did feel magical to have all of the components of graduation back and have that kind of beautiful sunny day. It was really special. And I guess just to see the culmination of this work we all do together in a 2-day period is pretty amazing. So I think we had a really nice and wonderful graduation. I would also say it was great to see some of our board reps go across the stage and get to celebrate them like rock stars when they hit the stage of having the whole school board erupt for their graduations. I think some of them were a little shocked, but that was pretty awesome as well. So congratulations to all involved. It was amazing. So why don't we move on to the next item, which superintendent is works in progress. So over to you.
Okay, this is this first part of works in progress is not actually works in progress. It's a celebration and a congratulations and appreciation moment. And I guess maybe a commercial break, right, in the board meeting to recognize Diane Gunbari on her retirement in August. So I have some comments, but we can all clap and wave. So Diane has served in 10 years as an executive assistant to the superintendent and support for the board, and two decades of service to the Issaquah School District community at large. She started out at Cascade Ridge Elementary School as a paraprofessional and subsequently moved and worked in different positions at Grand Ridge Elementary School, and brings a passion for serving students, the community, staff, and families. And I would say that really 2 decades in a public school district in the roles that Diane has had, especially during high years of growth for enrollment and building construction to meet that demand, combined with COVID-19, it's like 5 times the amount of years. So I might actually call it district dog years in this regard. And she has been using her knowledge and skills and intellect based on her various experiences prior professionally, especially as a paralegal, to put to bear to support the district in the ways that she has. She's a proud parent of a graduate of Skyline High School and who is now completing a PhD at the University of Southern Mississippi. And in the retirement stage, Diane will be able to spend more time with her daughter, since her daughter will be relocating back to the West Coast. So that's a big moment, milestone for both. And some words that describe Diane include, and not limited to, service-oriented, patient, warm, full of grace, adaptive, accommodating, wise, and just simply amazing. So we have a token of appreciation here, in partnership with Bethany, and really all Bethany. And please join us in celebrating Diane. And a small token of appreciation on behalf of the district, the board, for your 100 years of district dog years of service to Issaquah School District. So if the board members want to share anything, please feel free, or as Diane comes up and accepts some tokens of our appreciation.
I was just gonna say, she has just been the loveliest person to work with over all these years. She is always the most supportive person, especially when you're sitting in the position of being board president and having to coordinate or do many things. She is always there, always so kind, no matter what, ready to help you with whatever it is you need to do right now, even though you're probably really interrupting her. And the other 100 things that she's working on, you would never know that by talking to her. So she has always been just the very best person to work with. And I truly hope you enjoy your retirement.
Well, I would just add that we always, the position is called, I think, executive assistant to the superintendent. And it's like, and oh, by the way, you provide support to the school board. And we probably should rephrase that a little bit because Diane provides a lot of support to the school board. Bethany, be warned. And to echo what Anne says, always patient, always gracious, even when we're obviously interrupting you and we need something yesterday. And it was only because we were too stupid to have not seen the email that you sent us a week ago. Always gracious, always helpful, always keeping us on track. And we thank you so much.
Well, and I remember when Diane came on, she was replacing a long-term assistant. And so it was very much how can anyone replace Lorraine? And you stepped in, you've done so wonderfully. And I think there's a level, I think one of the words grace, there's a level of grace that you provide to anyone who's interacting. You know, you get all the hostile parents before anyone else. And the fact that, you know, you've been able to manage that for the past 10 years and that you've come to work and created a great workspace and leadership for the other executive assistants in the building as well, I think is really important and a good reflection on just your capability. And thank you for keeping us on schedule and where we're supposed to be, when we're supposed to be there, herding the cats. So I definitely appreciate all that you've done and hope you enjoy your retirement.
Diane, you're just incredible and so kind. And I remember, orienting and years ago and just how you were able to help me navigate even this very small part of the district that I get to see, but the complexities of it and meeting all the new people and organizing all those first meetings with cabinet members. And I don't see, it's impressive how you just don't seem to be flustered by anything, at least whenever we interact with you. And yeah, I will miss you dearly, but so happy for you.
I could just say ditto. But, I've 4 years I've been around you. Patient is probably the word I would use, and just helping me understand what was going on and where I needed to be. And sometimes what flight I was supposed to be on. That happened a couple times too. So I just really will miss you and getting to work with you, and just incredibly grateful for the time we've gotten to work together. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you, Diane. I do have some other updates. So back to the regular scheduled program. But they're pretty short. So just on the update on strategic planning, we did have a meeting last week with our priority area owners to crosswalk priorities and review connections across the strategies. And this was the first meeting just of that group. So it was an opportunity to sort of start that routine and ritual, which will become more a part of our regular work as we move more towards implementation planning and progress monitoring in support of the strategic plan, but also as part of ends one. So that's a really important part of our work that we're setting up for as we prepare for summer. I also have a quick update on a meeting with the Chamber of Commerce Board, and just really wanted to echo that space did a nice highlight of our amazing graduations and our students and our families that support them. And so that was just a nice opportunity to continue to promote the work of the school district and have that connection with our Chamber of Commerce for Greater Issaquah. Some admin hiring updates, which I think are just important to sort of roll here since we're at that time of the year as we make some transitions. I'm pleased to officially announce that Jennifer Johnson is going to be the next assistant principal at Cougar Mountain Middle School. Jennifer is a veteran middle school administrator with knowledge, skills, and passion for supporting all students. She's coming from Bellevue, but already calls Issaquah home as her husband worked for the district and her 2 children attend school here. So she's already deeply invested in the community and is very excited to join that team. We'll be bringing our folks who have been newly hired into their administrative positions to meet the board at subsequent meetings as we start the fall. We've hired a controller as well, Cindy Feng, who is currently our district accountant, will take on that position and expanded leadership. 3 words that come to mind for me from the final interview about Cindy include confidence, competence, and integrity, which is the right, I hope, words that match that position. And she's also served in other positions in payroll and teaching and learning services, but has had experience outside of public education at Ernst & Young and banking at JP Morgan Chase. Most importantly, she's passionate about accounting, debits and credits, if I remember my courses right, and is already just excited about making sure that we are improving our systems and structures for public transparency and effectiveness and efficiency. We have also a leadership change at Gibson Eck. Julia Bamba has accepted the position of a principal on special assignment to lead secondary innovation work, and aligned with that, the approach for the next high school as it relates to programming and design. And I'm personally thrilled to work with Julia as she brings the values, skills, and track record of success and innovation, and is recognized currently as a national and regional leader in her work and Gibson Eck's experience for students. And with her transition, I'm happy to share that we've also selected the next Gibson Eck High School principal. That's going to be Tanya Reichel, who is currently the Dean of Students, and she was a founding team member when Gibson Eck was launched and thoroughly understands the principles and design process that Gibson Eck was founded on from the beginning and continues to grow and evolve. She did start her career as an English language arts teacher and department chair at Liberty High School. And her influence at Gibson Eck has already been instrumental in reimagining education for both students and teachers in that exchange and facilitation of learning that is relevant, real world, and competency based. So we're really excited for her to take on that next step in leading Gibson Eck to the next evolution of experiences for learning for our students, our partners, and our staff. So that's that. And then finally, I just want to recognize that we've got some great news for our district's communication and digital strategy team under the direction of Leisha Engels from the National School Public Relations Association, which I know that we've heard about in the past, but this is the time of year when these accolades come out. The first is a Golden Achievement Award for 2023 that for the Levy's 2022 campaign. So we had several entries for that, and that was awarded with that Golden Achievement Award. And then we also had an Excellence in Video Award for our video produced in-house, and that was, the submission was our video for recruitment for transportation teams. Bus driver Bob is the regular reference to that particular video. It's an incredible video, so, and great work by the team. So it's specifically Robert Miller. So there you go, some great news. That's everything from my end. That's my last comment for works in progress and celebrations.
Awesome. Thank you. Excuse me. So our next agenda item is around middle school course selection. I think Superintendent, you have some team members joining us at the podium. I will turn it over to you.
Yes, we have Executive Director of Middle School, Sherry Cox, and Chief Academic and Student Success Officer, Dr. Dana Bailey, to share on agency and choice at the middle school level.
I don't see the clicker up here, which is fine. Good evening, directors. I'm Sherry Cox, Executive Director of Middle School Education. And thanks for giving me an opportunity to share and answer some of your questions about the course selection process and how students have agency in this process in our middle schools. And I just want to pause for a second and just acknowledge that we just completed an amazing school year with our middle school students. I think the staff, the students, and the leaders at these schools did amazing work throughout the school year. And I'm just really proud to have worked with such an amazing group this school year. So I want to acknowledge that first. That is not a slideshow. Not want to look at that. All right. I would just want to go back and think about the origins of middle school. In the history, when I dig back into it about why middle schools, why we transitioned from junior high schools to middle schools, was really the idea around exploration, and that the middle school age group, the 6th through 8th grade time, was an opportunity for us to create schools where students could really explore new ideas, new course offerings, etc. And they were never intended to be miniature high schools, which is, I think, kind of direction we've seen them moving, and just kind of the ebb and flow of the middle school itself. And so I would really love us to go back a little bit to the days of being a more exploratory place, a place where students can participate in electives that they choose, as well as sports that they may choose. And so we all know that middle school is a time of enormous physical, social, emotional growth, and then puberty on top of all of it. And so why middle school electives are important are here in front of you. I'm not going to read through the list, but I believe that this is really an opportunity for students who really in elementary school do not have a lot of choice to come into a new environment and make some choices on their own. And sometimes those choices might be different than their families might wish that they would choose. So this year, middle schools continued to center student voice in this process, as well as many other processes in the schools. 3 of our schools conducted student interest surveys before we even opened up the course selection process. And you might wonder, well, why didn't all 6 do it? And others may have done it a year or 2 earlier or right before COVID. And so they're just running with the current course of our current selection of electives. As a result, many of these schools offered new electives this year. Aside from the ones listed here, Cougar Mountain also added a mixed media class for 7th and 8th graders next year. And Issaquah Middle School added yoga, zoology, and backyard fun. I don't know. Again, exploration. So, and on top of these here. So that was before this course selection process even began. And so then we opened up the course selection process, and we noticed that many of our middle schools that we didn't have enough sections, or we had to add sections of certain classes. And so again, you can see a list here. For example, Maywood had to add additional personal fitness classes because that's what the students wanted. They told us in their course selection process, they wanted more personal fitness classes at Maywood Middle School. So the principal built a course schedule that included these things, and there are others up here. I want to also note that at Beaver Lake, they also added a 6th grade leadership, and they increased their visual arts selections. Having said that, as much as we want to honor and give all students exactly what they ask for, we do have barriers, and there's 2 pretty simple ones listed there: teacher availability, and sometimes the way our spaces are developed. And so a prime example of teacher availability is this year we're just closed out. Maywood Middle School did not have a in-person Spanish class. We were fortunate, thanks to Martin Turney in the back. We did garner funds to do an online course for the students because we couldn't find a teacher. And so this year, Maywood is not going to offer Spanish at all. Again, there's no teachers available to teach Spanish. So there are some barriers. There are other places where our students get to select the courses. You are fully aware of the math and science and English language arts. There were some questions around kind of the elective schedule, and I'm going to get to that in a second. But there are year-long electives. Our music, Spanish, leadership, and study skills are year-long electives. And then there are many other trimester electives: technology, arts, some of the CTE, board games, film, pop culture, guitar, speech. The list goes on and on. The great news that I want to report is that almost every single middle schooler enrolling for the 23-24 school year received their first or second elective choice in their course schedule for next year. So our principals and counselors and registrars worked really hard to make that happen for our students. Again, here's some that are found at most of our middle schools, and then some of our unique singleton classes. So there's a variety of ways that students can go about their middle school experience. I just put 3 pretty common ones. Student A selects trimester electives for all 3 years, so they get 9 choices in the courses that they're going to take. Student B selects a year-long elective for all 3 years. For example, they may choose orchestra for every single year that they're at school. And student C selects 2 years of trimester electives, and then in their 8th grade year, they choose Spanish. So in the course of their 3 years, they would have 7 electives. And then the last thing before I turn it over to Dr. Bailey is we still value our families in this process. We go through a variety of different events and looks a little different at each of the middle schools. Some of them this year hosted live, or others hosted virtual events for the caregivers to learn more about the programs that are offered. Pine Lake and Beaver Lake have what they call an elective night, where families can come in and take a look at some of the electives and some of the projects that are made in those elective classes. And then in August, many of the schools open up the doors and just let families come and walk around and to just get to see the school, maybe see their kids' classes, although oftentimes the schedules are not quite ready at that event. And now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Bailey to talk a little bit about health and PE.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we've talked about PE a couple of times this year, and I wanted to bring back the math as to how the district has determined what we're going to do. So the Washington State PE requirements for middle school are linked there. They are required to take PE annually, and the part about trimesters versus semesters comes into play here. So a middle school trimester is 60 days and a semester is 90 days. So if you calculate, there are 180 days of school by 5 days in a week. That's 36 weeks of school. And the requirement is 100 weekly minutes on average for each school year is 3,600 minutes of required PE. And if you calculate 50 minutes on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and 40 minutes on Wednesdays, you get a 48 average per day minutes. That's 75 days of required PE. So that's how I came to the math of 75 required days of PE. 60 days is 1 trimester, 120 days is 2 trimesters. Typically, students in the Issaquah School District have 2 trimesters of PE and 1 trimester of health. And there are a number of ways that principals and counselors and teams can waive those requirements, and they do so for student needs. So if a student has competing interest, or they need a support class, or their 504 or IP demands it. So they use the allowable waivers to make sure students get exactly what they need. But that is how it is currently determined. And we do believe that physical fitness is really good for middle school bodies, and really healthy middle school bodies increases their how they feel at school, and supports their mental health. So that's how we come up with 2 trimesters per year for the most of the students in the school year, balanced out with 1 trimester of health, that he sort of takes that class period of 2 trimesters of PE and 1 trimester of health each year. Thank you. Want to do that last one? Sure.
Can
Thanks.
can we ask a question on this slide?
Sure.
Or should we ask questions in the
There's
middle? or
only
should
one
we
more
wait till
slide.
the end?
Let's do the end. And then we'll come back.
And I just want to show this mirrors more the timeline from last year, but just a typical timeline of how we go about this process of enrolling middle school students in their electives, and the places where we invite families into this process with us. And so with that, go ahead and take questions.
Before we jump into questions, there's just one more piece in the fall, in August, when everyone comes back, counselors especially work really diligently to look at the actual class assignments to make sure that classes, as the computer scheduled them, have good sense. So if you had a class that, say, had 29 boys and 2 girls, the counselors would work to balance that out, because the 2 girls might want some more pals in that class, and maybe a PE class of 29 boys and 2 girls wouldn't be fun for all involved. So there's a check that comes back in August where they go back and look at the actual schedules and make sure that if they wanted to do balancing, that you do the balancing before the students get their schedules, because after they get their schedules, it's disruptive to them to change.
Thank you.
Happy to answer any questions.
Do you want to go ahead, Director Moore?
Sure, I was, yeah, back on the PE, I was trying to understand it, because it was my recollection from having kids, but it was a long time ago that I had kids in middle school now, that in 6th grade, they only took 1 trimester of PE, 1 trimester of health, and then they had an open elective spot.
I was at Pine Lake when that was true, and it doesn't meet the basic requirements of the 75 days. So that was true. Or for a while, Pine Lake had a trimester and a half and then only 6 weeks of health. So that is what happened before, but we would have to go back a few years, like.
Yeah, and I
maybe
had
10.
kids at IMS.
Okay, so Pine Lake had the same situation where they had 1 trimester, long time ago, 1 trimester of health, 1 trimester of PE, and 1 trimester of a tech elective in 6th grade.
But now they don't, now they do 2 trimesters in,
And have for quite some time.
okay. They need to update their websites then. Because both IMS and Pine Lake indicate 6th grade is 1 trimester of PE, 1 health, and
Thank you for that.
I didn't go look at the other 4. I just happened to pick those 2 to look at.
And that is a true statement. I have a 6th grader at Pine Lake, and it is 1 trimester of PE this year.
Thank you.
Okay.
It
Um,
was health and then PE and then computer science.
Yes, okay.
Oh,
So
interesting.
interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
PCMS is definitely the 2 PE and 1
Every year,
health. Every,
all
yeah,
3 years. Okay, interesting. So I'll have to look
all
at
3 years.
the variation across the schools. And then with health, is it how does that requirement work in relation? I mean, the RCW or the WAC or whatever stated, how many minutes had to be done with PE. How does health work?
So health is a little bit different, and it has a requirement for health at elementary and middle school and high school. And it has specific requirements about FLASH or comprehensive sexual health. And it has specific requirements about CPR and about AIDS prevention. And so there isn't the same exact minutes requirement, or it doesn't read as it has to be done in a certain way. And for example, at the high school, in order to get the 2 times in high school for the comprehensive sexual health, they get 1 in their 10th grade, typically 10th grade health class, and once more in their senior year. So it's not quite as precise. But there are RCWs and WACs about the provision of health. And it's less about the minutes and more about the content.
Okay.
Oh, and
we-
suicide prevention. There's a RCW about suicide prevention.
to be included. And so just the way we deliver the content of what kids are supposed to get for their middle school years, we do it, it was one trimester per year to cover all the material they're supposed to get.
Correct.
Are there additional questions?
I asked questions ahead of time in writing. Were those going to get answered? By a response from the superintendent, was those going to get answered tonight?
Yeah, I mean, we have some answers, so I'll defer to the team to step into those.
I think Dr. Bailey has answered the PE ones, and I answered the question around the 3 years electives with the student A, B, and C. You asked some questions around sports, and I didn't include them in the presentation because it, like you said in your email, it seemed a little bit off topic. I can tell you, I think we do not offer waivers in middle school for PE when you play a sport. The other thing you asked is around the soccer question, and you're about the 17th person that's asked me that question. And historically, I've been told that it was around field space and community. There were lots of boys soccer in the community. To me, it's like, okay, and we do a field space. We needed to remain cost neutral this year. And so what I have the permission of the superintendent to do next year is to launch an exploratory team. I don't know what we want to call it. That will, your input will be sought, as well as middle school staff, middle school families, and most importantly, middle school students. And we'll take a look at the data around participation in our current sports. And then talk with everybody around what our sports program maybe could look like instead. And then bring that recommendation to the superintendent by probably March-ish of next year. To possibly change middle school sports, which very well could include the boys soccer.
What other changes would you be looking at wanting to do?
I don't want to make that determination because I think it's important that we co-design a program with our community, which includes, like I just mentioned, you all, our middle school students, and our middle school staff, coaches, leaders, etc.
I have a very specific question. Sure. And it's in the slide 4. What is CSD 3? Finally added CSD 3. Advanced speech and debate.
Go
It-
ahead.
It's a tech class.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay.
Computer science discoveries.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I just hadn't never heard of that. And maybe the other thing is, what is a class about board games? Like, are they making them?
That's a great question. It really is a social skills class
Oh,
for students to build their social skills in a different format.
got it. That's interesting.
But again, that came from a request from the middle school students at IMS.
No, it's interesting. I just was wondering if we were actually creating board games. That would be.
And they might be.
Really
It's a new
interesting.
course. So I'll know more after first trimester.
Awesome. Any additional questions or comments?
I would just add that, I mean, I think that we'll find that there's a high interest in soccer,
Oh, yeah.
to Dr. Gallander's point. And I'm excited to hear what else comes out from our student interest, because I think that will be a very valuable set of input to take into account as we shift and make different choices potentially, and let people know in partnership what those choices might yield if there's higher priority for certain sports that don't exist, or even how to manage if there's such a wide range, how you then, make choices within that as well. So I think it'll be an interesting process that I look forward to hearing more from our community on.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just think it's important that our students have opportunities. And I really worry in this community that by the time they're getting to high school, it's too late. And so I don't want students to have to be able to play a club sport and to be able to access those things. And that's why in middle school, it's so important to me. So I guess the clarity I was looking for up there was that we're not intending on trying to cancel sports or that's not the intent of going through to review and revise that. And that's what I didn't hear.
I don't believe, no, that is not the intent of going through that process and input process to cancel sports. It is to surface what are the needs in a larger scale, take stock of that, see what that then means as we see the variety, I would hope, and how that can support choice and supporting students to get the kinds of experiences, not only that spark their passion or tap into their natural inclination to then put them on a different pathway as they enter high school for various activities and sports as well.
Okay, thank you. With that, I think we should move on to the next topic, which is, excuse me, an update on EL5, actual financial condition. Superintendent.
Great. We have Chief Financial Officer and Chief Operating Officer Martin Turney with some support. I see waiting in the wings from Executive Director Mariah Banasic. So Martin, I'll turn it over to you. This is really just an update since there's some different context this year for the audit process.
That's better. Hello, thank you. Okay, so I'll start over. So EL5, the actual financial condition, really is when we typically come to you with our 2 audit reports and they're completed. So one is the financial and single federal audit, and one is the accountability audit report. What is still being concluded is the audit of the 21-22 fiscal year. So we're going back a ways. Typically, auditors in our district get started a little early. We have something in the spring and we come to you in May and possibly early June if it's delayed a little bit. This year, I know that the auditors had quite a bit of federal money related to the pandemic that they've been auditing throughout the state. So I think it's caused a bit of delay in their work and their workload. We've been in touch with our auditors in terms of our financial statements. We believe that we have no issues there, that those look fine. And once we get the report, that will look fairly well for the district. There is one issue that they've noted with the federal portion, and it has to do with the electronic connectivity fund grant. And this is something that a lot of districts are experiencing throughout the state right now. Those districts who took these funds, the auditors have come back pretty late in the game and decided that they have a way of looking at the compliance requirements that quite frankly are a little different than how all of us had seen that. And so the FCC is the federal agency that awarded these grants. They provided guidance to us along the way. Many of us are former auditors. We interpreted that guidance in how we operated the grant. And so we're at a place with our local team where they have not drafted anything for us right now to look at. We believe within the next month, we will have something that will lay out what they believe is going to be the resolution for this audit this year. For context, I should have mentioned this earlier, our district received about $420,000 in these funds in the 21-22 year. So that's kind of the ballpark of what we're talking about. And so once we are able to see what they've drafted for us in terms of that audit report, we'll be able to dive in a little deeper and give an analysis and a response at some point. And along with that, they also have an accountability audit to do, which they have not started yet. So what we're being told is they will not start planning or conducting that audit until they are finished with the other. So this is going to be an abnormally long time frame. something that we're not used to seeing. And again, it's a bit unprecedented for us. So that's kind of the nutshell update we wanted to provide you today, because it's something that is a little different.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Yes, Director Weaver.
So didn't I read something that because this is happening in a whole lot of districts that OSPI was trying to intercede and convince people to be a little more flexible around their interpretations, or am I misremembering that?
No, I think you're following along. There are many people working on this right now. I know that the state superintendent Reichtal issued a memo or letter. I'm not sure how they characterize it. Having had a conversation with the state auditor, we are part of a group that has been having conversations with the FCC. And I believe we've touched base with Maria Cantwell's office as well, or we will be trying to do that just to to get an idea of what we can do in this situation. We're among friends in the fact that this is impacting many of us at the same time, and we are all coming to it from kind of the same perspective. So.
And this is related to the documentation that was collected or kept by the districts in relation to the equipment that was passed out?
Correct. So this was assistance that the FCC provided to help districts acquire equipment or services to assist with unmet need that students may need something, right? So our district chose to purchase or get reimbursement for about 1,000 laptops. And so if you remember, in the middle of this period, we didn't know, as districts, whether we're going to have to go fully remote at any point. It was still really up in the air. So this is important funding that districts were relying on to make sure that those students who needed it could get it. And so the guidance up front in terms of how districts were supposed to come up with an estimate and then track and then provide as they handed out, doing the tracking was provided to us. We believe our interpretation of what we did is accurate and what we were intended and meant to do. So quite frankly, our feeling is that the auditor is taking a different look at this and we disagree. So that happens from time to time. And like I said, I don't think we're the only district. And I know we're not the only district that believes this. And so we are continuing to bring that to their attention.
So in your conversations with the FCC, have they shared at least what they think their interpretation was of what they expected? And did we meet that? And is there any risk that we're going to have to pay back to the federal government any monies?
Yeah, great question. I don't know if you have anything to add, Mariah. I know that what happens is, as I understand it, a lot of this work gets passed on from the state auditor to the FCC. So the FCC is still in the early stages of acquiring this information and determining, unless correct me if I got that wrong, determining what they're going to do at this stage. Absolutely, the question comes up about returning funds or not. And quite frankly, some folks consider whether or not to take funds the next time, because if it's one of those things that we're risking getting findings or other adverse, consequences, then we think about it. So I think at this point it's still unknown, and I'm not sure that they've communicated that to us as of yet. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, so the districts were kind of corresponding, working together, talking to the FCC, talking to OSPI, and nationwide, right now it looks like 4% of the audits nationwide for ECF findings is Washington State audits, but they make up 71% of the questionable costs. And that's only 10 districts reporting right now of findings. So that's, that's very early stages in the reporting, because these reports take a time to come out. So far, Washington State is standing out as being interpreted very differently than how it's being interpreted nationwide.
So then the question is, the interpretation by our auditor's office, correct, from the state auditor's office, is different than what other state auditors are doing, correct?
Yeah, so our Washington State auditor's office is standing out as interpreting the FCC's guidance very differently than other states. And so the FCC we have been talking to them, all the districts, and we don't know the conversations between, you know, them and the Washington State Auditor's Office. So the single audit process has to wrap up, and then those will be sent to the FCC, and then they will look at the audits. And depending on the scale, they're trying to determine their method of looking at all these different audits. And then, you know, looking at their interpretation compared to the Washington State Auditor's interpretation. And so some of the guidance that is very different is that the FCC says that school districts should have immense flexibility in how they're determining need. And, you know, this is in the middle of pandemic, and they didn't want to put on an undue burden on districts to create a lot of processes and documentation. And so there's an interpretation gap between that and the FCC guidance and what the Washington State Auditor's Office wants.
Any other questions?
Well, I'm befuddled, like, if our state is a standout, it tells me that there's something wrong there. And what, do we have a recourse to our attorney general, to the governor's office? Isn't this still considered administrative, and wouldn't the governor have ultimate jurisdiction over it?
All good questions, and we are researching everything we can.
Actually, I have another question. So this is happening to multiple districts across the state. Are the multiple districts all interpreting the guidance the same way, or do you have 200 different interpretations in 200 districts and the auditors are over here?
Based on my understanding and all the conversations we've been in, the districts have taken a very similar view of this, and what we've received, and even follow-up Q&As from the FCC of kind of affirmed this. And what's interesting is that, you know, we collaborate when we get grants in some way or another, but we don't always go in depth with each other. When we started comparing notes later, when this starts coming up, and we go, wow, yes, we all kind of had the same impression. And it's very interesting that it's varying from the auditor's office. So to answer your question, in short, yes, we all had the same impression.
We're in good company, right? I mean, it means if the way you all interpreted it was very similar to the way the other districts are, yes, it turns out it's different than what the auditor's office is deciding to interpret it. But you have good standing to have that company with you.
And the state auditor is an elected position, correct?
That is correct.
How about that? This could be an issue for them. And plus, if the auditor's office still has to do the accountability audit, I think you called it. I mean, this is setting them way behind going into next year even. This will have a ripple effect on this auditor because they're not usually still doing these kinds of audits now.
Yes, everything behind this is going to be delayed for them. So, yeah.
I think that those are the questions. So I'd say we'll continue to monitor, and you'll give us updates on as things unfold. So thank you for that update.
Thank you.
Our next topic is an update on EL1 executive constraint. Superintendent.
Thank you. So this is a draft. It's a work in progress because a critical component of EL1 utilizes evidence in EL5 and which relies on evidence of the audit. So given the context that was just shared about where we are with the audit process, this truly is just being presented as an opportunity to see the work in progress. It is for the year of 21 to 22. And so there's been some minor changes in the interpretation, really just clarification points in the interpretation itself. And the evidence that's been provided here has had some light updates as well. So and refresh for each year. And we have both Assistant Superintendent Donna Hood of Human Resources, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources Donna Hood, and Martin Turney, who's already been up here to provide any additional context for that particular school year. as well as to take questions overall and potentially even, this is an opportunity just to discuss any additional monitoring evidence that the board would be interested in as it relates to EL1 as well.
Did you want to start out with any additional comments or just go to questions? Okay, wonderful. Any questions or comments from the board?
We've sort of already talked it to death.
We've
with
talked
the
about the audit.
other
I just want to
one.
make sure there's
The
any.
audit part, but, and I don't have anything on the rest of it.
Okay. Well, thank you for being available, and we will await the finished audit so we can look at the final product. Thank
Great.
you.
So our plan would bring back both of these reports at the same time, at which point we have the audit completion and exit conference completed as well.
Wonderful. Okay, excuse me. Next on the agenda, we have superintendent's annual evaluation and contract action by the board. Do I have a motion?
I move the board extend the contract of Superintendent Heather Tauyik, including the contract addendum, by 1 year, making the term July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2026, and accept the annual summative evaluation of the superintendent, board superintendent linkage 5E, as presented.
Second.
Thank you for that. Excuse me.
Something in the air.
There's something. There's a little dust or something, I think. Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that. So this is our opportunity as a board to talk through that evaluation. We will have an opportunity for public comment if we see any, but maybe what we can do is start the discussion with any call outs or highlights from board members on this evaluation. Who'd like to start? I can. Oh, you're talking to me? I guess I can get started. And I'll just note that the board did get together over 2 occasions in order to work through the review May 4th and June 9th to complete it. Had a robust conversation. I think if I start out with the items, one of the items I would like to highlight in the discussion, I think has been an accomplishment over the last school year, superintendent is really is being very pleased with the way in which the insights, the material that was collected throughout the actual superintendent search process, seeing that not only leveraged by us in order to make the selection of superintendent, but watching that get used through your onboarding as you've launched with the community and as insights that have been leveraged in a number of places, including our strategic plan, and really using that as a launching into community connections with local organizations and elected officials. So that was an item that for me was very positive in the last year. We'll just go down. Mhm.
Okay, so one of the things that I'd like to share is the superintendent has done a great deal of community outreach by leveraging video messaging, social media, and written communications.
Okay, and another one is another really big accomplishment this year was the review and rewrite of the interpretation of our ends and executive limitations. I don't think we even really thought about the fact that that would be something you might want to do in the very first year so that you can add your ownership to these ends and ELs and have them reflect your thinking behind them. So that was excellent work.
And a little bit adding on to what Director Mullings was talking about, just the extensive work, including the engagement with students and communities and school district staff and the board to develop a vision for the district that we've never had before. which the board has adopted, and the formation of the street 3-year strategic plan with objectives and goals that were approved by the board via our resolution of support of that.
And we appreciate that through this first year, you have really been intentional about having both formal and informal visits in every building and campus in the district. And not only that, but that you have hosted cabinet meetings in various buildings, and think that's really important to lead and show that important work to cabinet. So thank you.
I know that one of the items that was really important as a board was how we could bring additional outside perspective and expertise into Issaquah School District. And so I think another item of note as an accomplishment is how you've done that in your previous experiences with other districts, other organizations, and even making additional connections. A great example of that being the ASU plus GSV conference and allowing the board an opportunity to really do some futuring on what's possible through that opportunity.
And one accomplishment that is near and dear to my heart, as I was so rudely thrust into the position of board representative, although it's been fun. So, but the superintendent and her staff have supported the establishment and the running of our it's still new, student representation program. The program is obviously bringing more student insights directly to the board, but there's been a great deal of refining of the process going on, and how do we bring that voice to more board meetings and on more topics. And certainly Director Meraldo and I appreciate the support that we got when 80 students applied for the position and we had to winnow that down to 8. That was not fun, or 6. But we do appreciate the support that we've received.
All right. Another big thing this year was, of course, the development of our budget and that process. And this year, there was a real focus on doing the work earlier and more transparently. A lot of the focus was on administrative right sizing this year. And of course, that thankfully allowed us to avoid the disruption that comes from having a reduction in force. And so appreciated the entire process of the budget planning and the engagement with both the board and the community around that.
I think, and speaking back somewhat a little to the one before, but just developing relationships and in this case, developing community relationships, joining the Rotary and the Chamber of Commerce, being a keynote speaker for the Issaquah State of the City. And the hope is that we've seen through your other relationships how you're able to leverage those. So as you're building relationships within this community, knowing that in the future you'll be able to leverage those to the benefit of the district.
We also appreciate how you have really focused on nurturing and building those relationships with all of our bargaining units. Those are essential for us to have successful school, and we appreciate the attention that you've done for that.
And then I think, you've really brought a spirit of the importance of culture and working as a team across the admin, across the district, and that spirit of collaboration is really important and well valued. So thank you. With that, maybe what I'll do, since we said we would take public comment on this one, I'll see if we have any public comment within the room. If any on Zoom, we do not. Then any additional comments or commentary or discussion from the board? No, I will. I was looking at probably got the one good eye. Any from the superintendent? Any comments you'd like to make?
It has been, I know sometimes characterize the first year of any role, new role, especially coming to a newer community and a role that might be different than the past. Sometimes people characterize that as surviving, and I don't quite think of it that way at all. I feel really grateful and humbled by the past year in terms of the learning that I've experienced, but also the work that I've been able to do in partnership with many people. So I would like to share that our entire cabinet and team has been, when I look at that and I hear that list of things that you've just named, it's all due to the work of many other people. Many hands make light work is a lot of the way we phrase things here in Issaquah. And I don't want to name individuals because that would be odd to do and then disproportionately maybe geared towards some versus others. And but it is many more people that create that kind of experience for our community, our students, our staff as well. So kudos to really a strong set of individuals who are able to help provide that support and leadership. And I am excited to take that work to the next level. The words of in my past have been transformation and change and impact and driven to drive continuous learning and results for our students and positive experiences for all that are involved. And so that is on the horizon and excited to launch into that work next year and to accelerate the pace of that change. Thank you for the feedback, and it's very uncomfortable to sit here and hear that, but I'm getting used to receiving it and sitting in that graceful spot. So thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. With that, we have a motion on the floor. We'll go to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? With that, it passes. Thank you.
Welcome to Issaquah.
Welcome. You did it. Great job. And with that, we can move to legislative matters. Director Callender.
No updates.
Thank you for that. Any additional from anyone else? Okay. Okay.
Well, I did attend WASDA's FRN meeting, so we meet monthly when possible, and most of the times it's very difficult to make it sometimes. But really looking at our legislative priorities for the upcoming year. So, and really kind of talking about whether or not we want to make any visits with in-district visits with legislators as they come home for August. And I don't know that we really settled on that, but really special ed is going to be at the top of our discussions. But there was a lot of conversation around, so broadband was there and food for students, but conversation around impact fees and how that never really gets highlighted and up to the higher list of, what are your top 3 issues, but it really does impact districts differently throughout the state. So if you're a district with a lot of tribal land, that's one assessment of how you're going to use those impact fees. If you are any of the districts along the gorge where you just have large swaths of federal parkland, how are you going to utilize those fees and being able to make sure that we make that those districts get it. And then for areas that have a high, if you have an Army base or, JBLM. So how does that impact those districts and what is happening with those impact fees? And so I think that we want to have a broader discussion around that because it's one of those things that it doesn't rise to the top, but for those small districts, it's actually a huge chunk of money. And so how can we give voice to that for a district that I think we receive like maybe $50,000 in impact fees a year? It's a very nominal number. And so how do we really track that? And so it was an interesting conversation, and I don't know about whether or not we'll be able to schedule any meetings with our legislators. We have 2 congressional members that attach to the district, Congressman Adam Smith and Congresswoman Kim Schreier. So it's about whether or not we can make some of those connections. And we might just, want to think about whether or not we want to do that as a district while they're here.
Thank you for that update. Excuse me. Next, we have announcements and correspondence. They're attached. Are there any additional items to share at this time? Wonderful. Okay, we'll move on to calendaring and future agenda topics. I believe we have a motion here. I would like that motion. Thank you.
I move the board adopt the policy governance monitoring calendar for the 2023-24 school year as presented.
Second.
Thank you for that. We have the updates attached. We talked about this, I believe, last meeting and made some updates. Any additional discussion or questions about this version? Okay, hearing none, I think we can move to a vote on this item. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any against? Okay, that one passes as well. Thank you. And seeing any other topics for discussion? With that, we'll call